the Druids of Britain, just like the Brahmins of India, were considered to be higher in status than the kings. They were, and they also were known to have mystical abilities. Now, it's said that when a young student went to learn with his master at the age of 4 or 5, he would memorize all of these sacred verses off by heart. But included in the sacred verses was the knowledge by which they could attain mystical powers. There are many stories of the Brahmins having mystical powers in India, but and these are said to be contained in the Samaveda. But the Druids of Britain, they had similar powers. For example, when St. Patrick went to Ireland, the king at Tara brought out his druids to test their powers against the power of St. Patrick, because they thought, whoever had the most power was more credible somehow. And St. Patrick performed some sort of magical, or exhibited some magical ability. And then one of the druids came forward and he chanted a mantra which turned although it was the middle of the afternoon, it turned the whole sky dark as if it was night within a second. So they were so powerful that they could contradict nature. And then he brought another druid forward, and the druid chanted another mantra, and snow started to fall. But it fell so quickly and so heavily that they were all up to their waists in snow in moments. So the Druids learned the mystical mantras just like the Brahmins of India. Okay, let me diverge, because maybe you can cut this out and put it in, use this instead of that out. Let me just start telling the story. I've been researching these similarities for many years, because when I joined the Hare Krishna movement in 1972, Srila Prabhupada one day gave a lecture at Bury Place, and he spoke about the ancient Vedic culture one morning in a class, and I found this really difficult to accept because I was into history. I took a big interest in history. I read a lot of books on history. History was my thing. And Prabhupada said that at one time there was only one culture throughout the whole of the world. And he described that culture as Vedic culture. And he said there was one language, which was Sanskrit, and there was one form of religion, which he described as Dharma. Now, this was hard to understand because he mentioned in the class that this type of culture that existed throughout the world was lost 5,000 years ago. But it was existing until then. So I couldn't figure this out. So I thought, okay, well, there are lots of historical textbooks that speak of times way before that, going back into the Stone Age and, Paleolithic. There's so much archaeology, but I've never read or heard anywhere that there was a Vedic age like the type that exists in India, all over the world, and particularly in Europe and Britain. So I was concerned because I thought, well, if Prabhupada can be wrong about this, which I thought he was, I thought this is wrong. Surely, if such a culture existed only 5,000 years ago, the professors would know about it, they would be teaching it in the universities, they would be writing textbooks. So I was in two minds whether to get my clothes and leave. But then I thought to myself, okay, I had to rationalise it. Prabhupada is a pure devotee. He's a Sanskrit scholar. He spent his life studying the Vedas. Perhaps he knows something that, that the Western scholars don't. So I gave him the benefit of the doubt. And at the end, when he asked for questions, I didn't even know where to begin to ask my question. So I just left it there. But I thought to myself that I would look and I would find out. I'd study it and I'd see if I could find, any proof of a Vedic culture, a worldwide Vedic culture. And straight away, I went. I was looking in a dictionary just shortly after, and I saw under the word English, Indo-European language. So I thought, well, okay, we got something there. There's a connection there, that English is Indo-European. And I started to read anything I could on the Aryan invasion, how Vedic culture might have originally come from India to the West. And I started to build up a picture. And it seemed to me that there were a number of historians who seemed to agree that Vedic culture had come from India. And that it had been brought from India by various Aryan tribes people, over a period of time, through migration. But one day, in the late 80s, I was driving through Cardiff in the late 80s, and I saw a sign for a book fair. So I pulled my car over, went in, had a look, and I found a shelf on philosophy. And I was dead keen at that time on Greek philosophy. And it just seemed amazing to me that 2,500 years ago there were people alive in Greece who were able to analyse things so finely. So I'd hoped to find something on Greek philosophy. I found a book there called The Philosophy of Ancient Britain. And I thought to myself, wow, I didn't know there was a philosophy of ancient Britain. When I thought of ancient Britain, I thought of what I'd been taught at school and what I'd read. That Britain was, was a very uncultured, unsophisticated place in prehistory.